Welcome to the deep dive. Tonight, we're venturing into something pretty different, a stack of historical anomaly files.
Yeah, it really reads like something out of fiction, but these are documented reports.
Exactly. We've got a complex compilation here of, well, officially suppressed UAP reports, and they span decades, political divides, continents even.
From the Soviet Union, deep in the Cold War, all the way to Northern California, Scotland.
Our journey tonight really takes us from those frozen Soviet plains to, the Scottish Highlands, and even into some of the most restricted airspaces run by global powers.
And what's really fascinating here, I think, is that we're focusing intensely not just on what people saw,
Right.
but on the systemic response to it all, to the unexplained.
You mean how governments reacted?
Precisely. These incidents involve highly credible witnesses. We're talking trained engineers, career military officers, experienced radar technicians.
People who should know what they're looking at.
Absolutely. And they encountered something that just fundamentally defied their entire training, their whole frame of reference.
And the official reaction?
Almost universally the same, whether it's the KGB, the US Air Force, the UK's Ministry of Defense. It was immediate, quiet suppression.
So like silence, misdirection.
Misdirection, seizure of any physical evidence. Just make it go away.
Okay, so our goal tonight is to try and cut through some of that official noise, that fog.
Yeah, we want to extract the common patterns, what you might call an operational signature.
What did these objects actually do, physically, to the environment, to the technology around them?
What kind of tech disruption did they deploy? Was it always the same?
And what about physical evidence? Did they leave scars, marks on the landscape? Indelible ones.
And maybe the biggest question, how did powerful states like the USSR and the NATO allies, how did they manage the narrative when they potentially realized they were, technologically powerless against these things?
Right. That's a huge implication. We've got a massive amount of detail to cover, sourced from this compilation. So let's get into it. Let's unpack this. I want to start with a really chilling account. It's from the Ukrainian SSR back in 1983. The Kremenets interference incident.
Yeah.
This is just a terrifying illustration of how technology around these objects simply died. Systematically, totally. It gives you a very clear picture of some kind of localized, almost hostile energy field.
It's a textbook Cold War incident, this one, and it clearly demonstrates a kind of electromagnetic, or EM, vulnerability. What makes it even more profound is that it involves heavy-duty industrial machinery, a train locomotive.
So who are the witnesses here?
We have Vessel Korl. He's a railroad engineer, 30 years on the job, very experienced, and his assistant, Dmytro Ivanchuk.
And they are just on a routine run.
Yeah, a routine night freight run. They're piloting this massive diesel locomotive heading from Zhytomyr to Lviv. And the incident happens near kilometer post 2041.
Where is that, roughly?
Deep in the woods, really. Western Ukraine. It's dark, it's cold, probably snow on the ground, isolated.
Okay, so the routine shatters.
Yeah.
But not with a crash,
Yeah.
right? It was quieter.
Exactly. It was insidious. A quiet drain. Vassal described it very meticulously later. The cabin lights, they didn't just switch off.
No.
They faded gradually. Like the power was being, siphoned away, pulled right out of the wires, maybe even out of the air around them.
Wow. And other instruments?
The voltmeter, which measures the electrical current, that dropped steadily. The oil pressure gauge, and this is key because it's largely mechanical, that followed suit. It dropped too.
Electrical and mechanical systems failing together.
That combination is highly significant, yeah.
Yeah.
If it was just, say, a simple short circuit, you'd expect maybe a surge or a sudden failure in one system.
Right, like a fuse blowing.
Exactly. But the failure of electrical systems like the lights and the voltmeter, combined with the simultaneous decay of mechanical indicators like oil pressure, that suggests a really comprehensive interference field, something affecting multiple unrelated systems.
Like a localized energy bubble. Or a siphon, like you said.
Sort of like an energy siphon drawing power from everything it touches. It's not just like unplugging one appliance. It's like weakening the power source itself, somehow draining the battery's core, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And it gets worse, right?
Yeah.
The loss of control becomes unnerving.
Absolutely. The digital signal alert system, which should have been warning them about track conditions ahead, it just scrambled instantly, turned into useless static.
Radio.
Dead, completely dead. But then something else happened. The emergency protocols took over.
The train stopped itself.
The brakes kicked in automatically, brought the entire freight train to a complete stop. No input from Vassal needed. Or possible, maybe.
Why is that automatic stop so important?
Well, in these kinds of heavy systems, it's a failsafe, right? It's triggered by a complete system fault or a massive unexpected power interruption.
So if this object generated a field that basically flattened the locomotive's electrical capacity down to zero?
Then the emergency braking would automatically engage.
Yeah.
Yeah. It points to a total system override caused by some powerful external force, not just a glitch inside the train.
Not interference, but a shutdown.
A total localized shutdown. Yeah.
And what caused this?
Yeah.
This industrial blackout, what did they see?
About 100 meters down the track, just hovering silently right above the rails, was a sphere.
A sphere, how big?
Around 4 meters wide, according to Vassal. And the description is vivid, glowing intensely like molten glass.
Just hanging there, no sound.
No sound, no sway, completely stationary. And Basil Coral, the engineer, he reported feeling this odd, heavy stillness in the air. He specifically described it as feeling like being underwater.
Underwater, that's a strange sensation.
It is, and it connects to other sensory experiences reported in these types of encounters. Dimitro, the assistant, he reported intense pressure in his ears.
Like when you're in an airplane.
Exactly, like descending rapidly, or maybe like being deep underwater, as Vassal felt, pressure building up.
Is there a scientific reason for that feeling?
Well, researchers who look into these cases often link these physical symptoms, the stillness, the ear pressure, that heavy feeling, to potential exposure to things like low-frequency radiation or maybe powerful, localized magnetic fields. Fields strong enough to physically affect human sensory organs.
And this pattern, the EM failure plus the physical sensations, it isn't just isolated to Soviet train tracks, is it?
Not at all. We see almost the exact same echo internationally. You mentioned Northern California, 1980, near the Klamath River.
Yeah, what happened there?
Campers reported seeing a disc-shaped object hovering silently nearby. Now, the EM effect here was observed on much simpler technology.
Like what?
Dogs. The dogs refused to leave the tents, showing clear signs of distress. Animals often seem more sensitive.
Okay.
And even more bizarrely, simple battery-powered lanterns started flickering and emitting this weak light, even when their switches were turned off.
Turned off? How was that even possible?
It reinforces the idea that this field effect, whatever it is, it's indiscriminate. It's powerful enough to affect sophisticated train systems and simple, low-voltage battery circuits. It doesn't care about the complexity.
It just affects energy.
Seems like it. And the pressure symptom, it's consistent too. Look at the La Serena encounter down in Chile, 1977.
Tell me about that one.
You have Carabinero officers, the national police, approaching a hovering sort of bluish light. As they got closer, their patrol car radio just crackled into total static. Complete communication blackout.
Just like the train radio.
Exactly. And Officer Ernesto Vidal, one of the policemen, he explicitly reported feeling that distinct pressure in the ears just moments before the light vanished.
So the pattern holds up. Proximity seems to lead to this localized bubble of EM influence, causing system failures and these weird physical pressure symptoms.
That's the signature, yeah. Very consistent across decades and continents.
And back in Kremenez, how long did this fear stay there?
Vassal and Dimitro observed it for nearly 7 minutes, just hanging there, glowing. And then it just vanished, like a light switched off. Instantly gone.
Wow. And the train?
Just as mysteriously, everything came back online, instruments flickered back to life, the static cleared from the radio, the engine rumbled back into operation, like nothing had happened.
Except it had.
Except it had. And the only evidence left initially was the memory of the crew and, well, the physical trace it left on the ground. Which brings us to the next part.
Right, the physical imprints. The evidence that apparently wouldn't burn. Or maybe did burn in a very strange way.
Yeah, if the instrumental failures tell us what happened this field effect, then the physical imprints might give us clues about how. About a propulsion system, maybe, that uses energy transfer methods completely alien to our current understanding of physics.
Because these things left scars, right? Deniable scars, but scars that defy the usual rules of energy.
Undeniable scars, I'd say. Scars that directly contradict conventional energy dissipation laws. Let's start with the hard evidence from Kremenez, 1983. Vassal and Dimitro didn't just see a light, they saw the aftermath.
And the authorities got involved quickly.
Oh, immediately. The official response was swift and thorough. We're talking immediate physical intervention by teams from the KGB.
Of course.
And the Ministry of Defense's ETH Directorate.
ETH Directorate, what's that?
Think of it as the Soviet military's specialized scientific and technical analysis branch. Highly trained experts. These weren't local militias stumbling around. This was the highest level of state expertise being mobilized to assess a potential technological threat.
And what did they do?
They physically removed the entire segment of the railway track where the object had hovered. And the ballast beneath it, that's the gravel bed the tracks rest on.
They took it all away.
The whole section. And the findings, which only came out much later, in a declassified document around 2006, they show this really astonishing contradiction.
What did they find in the gravel?
The gravel ballast, right under where the sphere had been, was fused together, fused into glass-like clumps, vitrified.
Glass from gravel. How hot does it need to be for that?
The military lab analysis estimated the temperatures required for that level of fusion would have to exceed 1,100 degrees Celsius.
That's incredibly hot, like a furnace or a lava.
Exactly. Volcanic vent temperatures, specialized industrial furnace levels, that's the kind of heat we're talking about.
Okay, but wait. If you apply 1,100 degrees Celsius heat conventionally,
then you'd expect massive peripheral damage, right?
Right.
That's the central paradox here.
the snow all around the tracks should have melted instantly, for meters around.
Absolutely. The wooden railway ties underneath should have burst into flames. The air itself should have been shimmering, you'd think, from the intense radiating heat.
Wow.
But the report specifically confirmed there were no burn marks, no soot on the surrounding materials, on the ties, anywhere. And the snow nearby, still intact, undisturbed.
That doesn't make any sense. How do you apply furnace-level heat with that kind of surgical precision just to the gravel without any of the expected heat spreading out?
It sounds impossible according to our understanding, doesn't it?
It seems to violate basic physics. Conduction, convection, radiation, all that stuff.
It really does. It strongly suggests we're not looking at simple combustion like a jet engine's exhaust. Maybe it's something like an extremely focused energy beam.
Right.
Or perhaps more likely, based on other theories, a highly localized plasma field being used for propulsion. A field where the thermal energy, the waste heat, is somehow contained and directed only onto the surface immediately beneath the craft.
So like a footprint of intense heat, but with sharp edges. No spillover.
Exactly. It implies a mastery of energy manipulation far beyond ours. The ability to apply extreme localized force or heat without the messy, conventional collateral damage we always associate with high energy transfer.
And we see similar, maybe less intense thermal effects elsewhere, like Klamath River.
We do. The Klamath River imprint from that 1980 California sighting, rangers found a circular scorch mark roughly 20 feet across, right where the campers said the object hovered.
Scorched, so definitely heat involved there too.
Yes, but again with nuances. The grass was flattened and browned, maybe cooked, but not reduced to ash, not like a wildfire had gone through.
Okay.
But crucially, right in the very center of that circle, the soil itself was melted and fused into a shallow, glassy lens shape. Vitrified soil. It confirms that localized, intense thermal pressure right at the focal point.
Just like the gravel in Creminets, but maybe not quite as hot.
Possibly, or applied for a shorter duration. But this Klamath case gives us a bit more detail on residual effects, too.
Like what?
The bark on trees around the edge of the circle showed clear signs of high heat exposure. It was curled and blackened. But perhaps the most compelling detail involves wildlife.
The animals again?
Investigators noted clear animal tracks, deer, raccoons approaching the clearing where the circle was, but the tracks stopped short. The animals absolutely refused to enter the central scorched zone days after the event.
Why is that important? What does that suggest?
It suggests there was some kind of lingering alteration to that specific patch of ground, something beyond just residual heat which would have dissipated.
Like, what? Magnetism.
Radiation.
They have a residual magnetism, or a subtle change in the air's ionization, or something else we don't even have instruments for. Whatever it was, the local biology, the animals, sensed a lasting, maybe dangerous, energetic imprint there and avoided it.
So the event didn't just happen and end cleanly. It left a kind of persistent signature, a warning sign.
That's what it implies, yeah. A permanent, perhaps hazardous signature on the environment.
Okay, so we've seen extreme localized heat. What about other physical effects? Weight, maybe.
Let's pivot from heat to kinetic force, extreme weight. We can look at the Banserami incident in France, way back in 1957.
France 57, what happened?
A farmer, Marius Du Wild, reported seeing a metallic, sort of spinning top-shaped object actually land briefly in his field.
It landed.
Apparently. When investigators arrived later, they found the grass flattened in a perfect circle, about 3 meters across.
Flattened grass.
Yeah.
Okay, but was it scorched like Klamath? No. That's the key difference here. This is the kinetic paradox. Unlike Creminus or Klamath, there was no scorching, no fusion, no sign of intense heat at all.
Just pressed down.
Just pressed flat, as if by an immense, highly concentrated weight. We're talking about an object presumably capable of generating tremendous downward force to land or hover low.
But then it lifts off again.
Exactly, lifts off without leaving a huge blast crater or burn marks from propulsion exhaust or any disturbed soil you'd expect from, say, helicopter downdraft. Just suppressed grass.
How did the French authorities classify that one?
The French agency that investigated, GPAN, that stands for Group for the Study of Unidentified Aerospace Phenomena, they eventually classified it as PAN-D.
PAN-D meaning?
Meaning an unidentified phenomenon with credible witnesses, but ultimately insufficient data for a full scientific explanation. They acknowledged the physical trace, the flattened grass, but they couldn't explain the physics of how that pressure was applied so cleanly.
And there's another case with ground impressions, isn't there? The Polish one.
Yes, the Emelson case in Poland, 1978. This adds another layer to the physical evidence, specifically ground traces suggesting landing gear or support structures.
This was the farmer, Jan Wolski.
That's right. After his encounter with the boxy silver craft, which we'll discuss more later, his sons went back to the location.
And they found something.
They found 4 distinct square impressions left in the soft soil. Each one is about the size of a shoebox. Simple, clear, undeniable physical evidence of weight transfer where the craft had apparently rested.
Square impressions, like landing pads.
Exactly like landing pads or feet. And again, like Vancerami, no associated heat damage, just the marks of pressure.
So if you put these physical trace cases together, Creminus, Klamath, Vancerami, Emelson, what's the common thread?
The common denominator, whether you're in France, the Soviet Union, Poland, or the US, seems to be this focused, highly localized application of extreme energy.
Whether thermal energy, like intense heat.
Or kinetic energy, like immense weight.
And it's applied in a way that just completely violates our known laws of energy dissipation and diffusion.
Pretty much. If standard propulsion requires massive energy output, and that energy usually spreads out messily, well, these craft seem to have found a way to apply that energy with almost surgical containment. Extreme force, precisely directed.
Okay, that's unsettling from a physics perspective. Let's shift from the ground scars now to the air. Or maybe the lack of conflict in the air.
Right. It's one thing for a train's electrical system to fail or for grass to be flattened. It's another thing entirely when the most advanced, most restricted airspace defense systems in the world see something that their own instruments cannot confirm, or vice versa.
This is where the real security vulnerability gets exposed, isn't it?
This is absolutely the crux of the military threat analysis during the Cold War and even now. These objects, by demonstrating this kind of capability gap, they essentially rendered vast, multi-billion-dollar defense infrastructures, radar arrays, interceptor fleets, the works potentially irrelevant in certain scenarios.
So let's start with cases where the eye saw something, but the tech was blind. You mentioned Pangong Cho earlier.
Yes, the Pangong Cho late sightings. This is relatively recent, 2012, along the very high-altitude, highly militarized border between India and China.
High-altitude lake. Remote locations.
Extremely, over 14,000 feet. And Indian Army units, along with the Indo-Tibetan Border Police, reported over 100 visual sightings of these luminous spheres.
100 sightings.
Of spheres. Luminous spheres, yeah. Visible for hours at a time, apparently just drifting silently across the lake surface.
Okay, visible to the naked eye.
Yeah.
Confirmed by trained military personnel.
Yeah.
What happened when they pointed the tech at them?
That's the kicker. The official operational response was comprehensive. They deployed high-grade technical surveillance suites. We're talking military radar systems, spectrum analyzers looking for radio frequencies, sophisticated infrared or IR gear looking for heat signatures.
The standard toolkit for identifying aerial objects.
Absolutely. And the results? Universally blank. Nothing.
Nothing. But they could see them.
Visible to the naked eye, confirmed by over 100 trained observers across multiple units in multiple days. Yet the instruments registered absolutely zero.
No radar return. What does that mean technically?
It means the radar beams hitting the object weren't reflected back, or not enough to register. So no discernible reflective mass, at least not in the way radar expects for a physical object.
Okay. No radio frequencies.
Meaning the objects weren't emitting any detectable radio signals, no communication signals, no navigation signals, no energy source transmission that could be picked up, silent in the RF spectrum.
And crucially, No heat signature.
Critically, no heat signature detected by the IR systems. This implies no conventional engine exhaust, no hot surfaces you'd expect from any known propulsion system operating in that cold, high-altitude environment.
So, let me get this straight. You have an object that is physically present enough to be clearly seen by multiple trained observers over extended periods. Yet it somehow achieves a level of stealth that makes it fundamentally invisible to radar, radio frequency detection, and infrared sensors, all at the same time.
That's precisely the report. Just light, essentially. Visible light, but no other detectable signature.
How do the source materials even try to rationalize that? An object that's just light and nothing else detectable. That seems impossible.
Well, the analyst reports included in the compilation, they really speculate heavily on physics and technologies far outside our known parameters. It's theoretical, obviously.
Like what kind of theories?
One hypothesis involves energy manipulation that could maybe bend light around the object, making it visually present, but perhaps shifting its electromagnetic signature outside of detectable ranges. Another idea is absorbing radar waves instead of reflecting them.
Like stealth aircraft technology, but better.
Orders of magnitude better, potentially. Or perhaps deploying some kind of localized field, maybe ionizing the air immediately around the craft, like a form of plasma cloaking.
Plasma cloak.
Theoretically, if the object is encased in a layer of cold plasma, it could potentially deflect or absorb electromagnetic energy like radar waves, while also not presenting a conventional heat signature to IR sensors because the plasma itself isn't necessarily hot in the way exhaust is.
That's highly speculative.
Extremely speculative, but it's the kind of thinking you're forced into when faced with phenomena that defy conventional detection methods so completely.
Okay, so that's visual sighting, technical blank.
Yeah.
What about the opposite, where the tech sees something but the eyes don't? You mentioned the UFO incident.
Yes, the UFO military district incident, USSR 1978. This is a stark contrast. And significantly, this happened right inside Moscow's heavily protected air defense corridor. This is the heart of Soviet airspace security.
And here, the radar did see them.
Oh, absolutely. Radar Unit 7162 tracked 5 distinct, strong, dense metallic returns. These weren't faint blips or weather anomalies. The signals indicated solid objects with high reflectivity, like aircraft metal.
Okay, so radar contact confirmed. What was strange about them?
Their behavior, their movement just defied Newtonian physics, defied everything known about aerodynamics and ballistics.
How so?
They moved erratically, in completely non-ballistic ways. They could apparently pause midair, just hang there stationary for extended periods.
Hovering,
yes. Then they could slide sideways instantly with no apparent turning radius. They were observed contracting into unconventional formations, like a triangular stack at one point.
a stack, like one on top of the other.
That's how the report described it. And perhaps most dramatically, they demonstrated instantaneous acceleration. Meaning they could go from 0 speed, just hovering, to speeds estimated at Mach 2 instantly, with no visible acceleration curve, no buildup of speed, just gone.
That's physically impossible for any conventional aircraft. The G-forces alone
Would tear apart any known airframe and certainly kill any pilot. The technician who logged the incident, his description later was that the flight profile seemed like they moved like thought, not like any craft. Just immediate changes in velocity and direction.
Okay, so strong radar returns showing impossible flight characteristics. What happened next? Did they scramble jets?
They did. MiG-25 interceptors were scrambled from the nearby Kabinka Air Base, high-speed, high-altitude interceptors.
Did the pilot see them?
Here's the other paradox. The air defense system worked perfectly in one sense. The MiG pilots reported achieving radar lock on the targets. Their onboard radar confirmed the objects were physically there and electronically dense enough to lock onto.
So radar lock confirmed from the air as well?
Yes, but the pilots saw nothing visually. No silhouettes against the dark sky, no lights, no shapes, nothing.
Wait, the ground radar saw them, the jet radar locked onto them, but the pilots looking right where the radar said they were saw? Empty sky.
Exactly. Electronically tangible, visually null. The complete opposite of the Pangong Cho sightings.
That raises the stakes considerably, doesn't it? How was this UFO incident classified internally?
This incident was logged internally within the Soviet military system as a Tier 4 anomaly confirmed.
Tier 4 anomaly confirmed. Can you break that down? What does that jargon mean?
Sure. In the Soviet classification system for unidentified phenomena at the time, Tier 4 essentially meant the highest level of confirmation and concern. It meant the event was confirmed by multiple independent surveillance platforms, in this case, ground radar and airborne radar.
Okay.
It involved high credibility military personnel, the the radar techs, the pilots, and crucially, it presented a perceived physical threat, or, at minimum, a significant technological challenge for which they had no known countermeasure.
Because these things penetrated Moscow's air shield.
At will. Demonstrated impossible maneuverability, evaded visual identification.
And then what happened? Did the MiGs engage?
Before any engagement could happen, just before 12:40 a.m., according to the logs, all 5 radar targets dropped simultaneously from every radar screen ground and airborne. Instantly gone.
Leaving no trace.
No residual echoes, no radar scatter, no indication of their exit path or speed, just vanished from the electronic battlefield.
That complete lack of any residual trace, no lingering heat bloom, no radar clutter from chaff or debris, that seems crucial too.
It is. It suggests a departure as clean and inexplicable as their maneuvers. And the immediate classification, and as we'll discuss, the subsequent suppression of this incident, it mirrors patterns seen elsewhere, like the Edwards Air Force Base incident in California back in 1965.
What happened at Edwards?
Similar elements. An object observed visually and possibly on radar showed controlled movement and significant acceleration beyond our known test parameters, right over one of the most sensitive flight test centers in the world. Interceptors were scrambled, but the object vanished. The case was eventually handled by the Project Blue Book liaison, quickly classified and essentially buried. A retired tower observer later recalled being told specifically not to log the observation formally.
So the technological gap, the inability to intercept or even properly track these things, was becoming evident on both sides of the Iron Curtain.
Absolutely. And that leads us directly into the next critical pattern, the systemic suppression, the bureaucracy of denial.
Right. So we've established the phenomena. We've seen the electromagnetic interference, the weird localized ground scars, and this detection paradox, sometimes seen but not tracked, sometimes tracked but not seen.
And underlying all of that is perhaps the most consistent pattern of all, the mechanism of systemic suppression. What happens when these highly secure, highly centralized states, east or west, encounter something they simply cannot explain or control?
They make it disappear.
They disappear the evidence, and they control or neutralize the witnesses.
Let's look at the Soviet method first. Especially during the height of Cold War paranoia, how did they handle cases like Kremenis and Usovo?
The approach was typically immediate, quite brutal, and very physical. In both Kremenis, the train incident, and Usovo, the radar MiG incident, the intervention was led directly by the state security apparatus. We're talking the KGB and the GRU.
GRU.
Main intelligence director. That's Soviet military intelligence. So the top internal security and military intelligence agencies were handling this directly.
And their goal was?
Absolute control over the information flow.
Yeah.
And frankly, neutralizing the witnesses as potential sources of leaks or inconvenient truths.
How did they do that in Kremenis with the train engineers?
Vasyl Korol and Dmitry Ivanchuk were separated almost immediately, questioned intensely, likely under significant duress.
And then forced to sign false reports.
Exactly. They were presented with pre-written statements, reports they were forced to sign, which attributed the entire event to vague, non-threatening, technical-sounding nonsense.
Like what?
Things like ionospheric interference affecting the signals, or maybe a Ministry of Defense atmospheric experiment that went slightly awry. Plausible deniability cloaked in jargon.
Jargon designed to sound official but mean nothing.
Precisely. Authoritative, confusing, and ultimately dismissive of the actual reported experience.
And the suppression went further than just coerced statements, didn't it? They altered records.
Oh, yes. The official logbooks for the train's journey, the primary record, were physically confiscated and literally rewritten by hand by KGB personnel. All references to the power failure, the hovering sphere, the stoppage time were simply erased or altered.
Rewritten by hand. Why?
Easier to mimic existing handwriting, maybe. Harder to detect forgery than altering a typed page. And significantly, an order came down that going forward, for that specific segment of the railway line, typewritten records were forbidden. Only handwritten logs were permitted.
Making future manipulation easier.
Much easier. And then came the human cost, the silencing of the individuals. Dimitro, the assistant engineer, was quietly reassigned, sent off to a remote switching yard far away. Vasyl Korol's fate is less clear in the source, but another key witness, Lysenko, potentially a dispatcher or station master who might have been involved, was moved sideways into a low-level, dead-end desk job.
Silent professional eradication. Get them out of the way.
Exactly. Remove them from positions where they might talk or have credibility.
And was this a similar process for the Usovo incident with the military personnel?
Very similar protocol, just applied within the military structure. Major Chernov from the GRU along with KGB personnel, arrived almost immediately at Radar Unit 7162. They confiscated everything.
All the tapes.
All magnetic tapes containing the radar data, all the printed readouts, all handwritten logs from the technicians on duty, everything tangible was seized.
And the personnel involved, like the commanding officer.
Lieutenant Colonel Chalan, who was the senior officer overseeing that air defense section during the incident, suffered immediate consequences. He was instantly demoted and reassigned to a completely unrelated desk job within the Ministry of Communications. A clear signal to everyone else involved. Keep quiet.
And the official explanation cooked up for Husovo.
Standardized bureaucratic dismissal. It was officially recorded as a Type 4 atmospheric interference event. Again, technical jargon signifying nothing, designed to close the file.
And you mentioned a KGB memo about Kremenes.
Yes. A later declassified memo summarizing the Kremenes incident had this chillingly bureaucratic final line. Unexplained aerial incursion over non-strategic infrastructure. Matter requires no further escalation.
No further escalation. That sounds like code.
It became the default code across various agencies, it seems. It essentially meant, we don't understand this, we can't explain it, maybe we can't do anything about it, so we are ordering everyone to stop looking, stop asking questions, and file it away. Bury it.
Okay, so that's the Soviet method. Direct intervention, coercion, record manipulation, personnel reassignment. How did it compare in the West? Was it less severe or just different?
The Western approach, particularly as documented in cases involving the UK's MOD or the US military, was often less overtly physical, perhaps, but arguably just as effective in achieving suppression. It relied more on administrative procedures, classification laws, and sometimes psychological pressure.
Let's take the Calvine photograph. Scotland, 1990. You mentioned this briefly.
Yes, this is a potentially huge piece of evidence. Reportedly, one of the clearest daylight photographs ever taken of an unidentified object described as a large, solid, diamond shape seen hovering near an RAF Harrier jet during exercises.
A diamond next to a Harrier jet in daylight. That sounds incredible.
The photo was apparently taken by hikers who then passed it, along with their report, to a local newspaper, the Daily Record.
So it almost got out.
Almost. The journalist contacted the Ministry of Defense for comment, likely standard procedure.
And the MOD's reaction.
Immediate intervention. Not necessarily KGB-style intimidation, but an official seizure operation was initiated. The photo, the negatives, and the accompanying eyewitness report were all taken by the MOD.
Taken and classified.
Classified and filed away. Initially sealed for 30 years under public records rules, but that classification was later extended, reportedly now to 50 years or more. Effectively buried indefinitely.
Was there any reason given internally for why it was suppressed so heavily?
An internal MOD memo related to the case, which has since surfaced, noted that the release of the image could cause unnecessary public alarm.
Unnecessary public alarm. That sounds familiar, actually.
Yeah.
Is that just a more polite, maybe more democratic sounding way of saying the same thing the KGB meant when they demoted Lieutenant Colonel Chalan or rewrote the train logs?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Is the difference between the Soviet physical crackdown and the Western administrative archiving truly substantive? Or is it just, semantic, bureaucratic window dressing designed to achieve the exact same result?
Which is?
Concealment. Concealment of something unexplained, potentially something that reveals a massive technological vulnerability.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. The core motive seems universal. The concealment of vulnerability. The state cannot admit it doesn't understand something intruding into its airspace, or worse, that it can't do anything about it.
So the methods differ based on the political system.
Right. The Soviet method was more about immediate overt control, often enforced by fear of direct reprisal. The Western method leveraged existing bureaucratic structures, classification laws, and the weight of official silence. It relied on the public's general tendency to assume that if the government isn't talking about something, it must not be important or real.
But both systems were equally effective at neutralizing the evidence and controlling the narrative.
Arguably, yes. Both successfully kept these uncomfortable truths out of the public domain and away from wider scientific scrutiny. The bottom line is that incidents like UFO in the USSR and Edwards AFB in the US demonstrated, quite clearly, that the very heart of global air defense networks was permeable to phenomena that defied explanation and interception.
So closing the file with vague jargon like atmospheric interference or delaying release due to public alarm.
It was simply a necessary bureaucratic maneuver. It allowed the institutions to maintain the internal and public narrative of security, competence, and control even when the evidence suggested otherwise.
Okay. We've covered the technological failures, the physical traces, the detection paradoxes, and now the systemic suppression. But these reports aren't just about machines and documents. They're about people.
Absolutely. And sometimes the human element is the most compelling and perhaps the most unsettling aspect.
So to avoid getting completely lost in dry internal memos and classification codes, maybe we should focus on a single, really compelling human account. One that was even psychologically evaluated but still dismissed.
You're thinking of the Emelson encounter in Poland, 1978.
Exactly. Jan Wolski's story. Let's step away from the technical report structure for a moment, maybe try to capture the feeling of it, the human narrative.
It's a good case for that. This specific encounter is highly valued by researchers, not because the craft description is super detailed or technologically complex, but because of the perceived character of the witness himself.
Jan Wolski. Tell us about him.
He was 71 years old at the time, a farmer, deeply respected in his community, known for being calm, very reserved, incredibly lucid, and just utterly pragmatic. Not the kind of person given to flights of fancy or making things up for attention.
Okay, so a credible, grounded individual. What happened to him? Paint the picture.
Right. Picture this. It's early morning, maybe around 5 a.m., May 1978, in the rural area of Emelson, Poland. Jan is traveling down a narrow forest road. It's probably quiet, maybe a little foggy, just him and his horse-drawn cart. The only sound is the slow clop of hooves on the dirt road. The air is still heavy.
Sounds peaceful almost.
Until it isn't. He looks up and sees two figures walking towards him down the road, and instantly he feels something is wrong. Off.
What did they look like? His description.
He described them vividly, consistently. Even years later, they were short, maybe 5 feet tall. Their skin was pale, with an unusual olive gray or greenish tint, almost sickly looking, he implied.
And their faces.
Large, dark, almond-shaped eyes, dominating the face. They wore dark, one-piece, farm-fitting overalls. No visible seams, belts, or fasteners. Just smooth, dark uniforms.
Did they speak to him?
They did, but not in any language he recognized. Not Polish, not Russian, not German. He described it as quick, sharp syllables, like stones clicking together rapidly, an utterly alien sound.
How did he react? Was he terrified?
He reported feeling a mix of confusion and, yes, a building dread, but he also seemed strangely passive. They motioned for him to follow them off the road. He just complied, left his horse and cart standing there, and walked with them into a small clearing nearby.
And in the clearing.
And there it was, not some sleek, beautiful, shimmering disc like you see in movies sometimes. This was described as boxy, almost rectangular with rounded edges, made of a dull, seamless silver or gray metal, heavy looking.
Was it on the ground?
No, it was hovering, silently, maybe 5 feet off the ground, casting this massive, oppressive shadow in the quiet forest clearing. No lights reported, no sound, just presence.
And they took him inside.
They indicated for him to board. There was apparently a ramp or lift mechanism. Once inside, his feeling was one of jarring clinical detachment. He felt confused, but not overwhelming panic, almost as if his emotional response was somehow dampened or muted.
That's strange in itself.
It is. Inside, he said the walls were metallic, seamless. He was gestured to undress. He did. He then stood on a small, raised platform in the center of the room.
And then? An examination.
Yes, an inspection. One of the beings used a small, handheld device. He described it as two disc-like objects connected by rods. They moved it around his body.
Did it touch him? Make noise?
No. That was crucial to his testimony. The device made absolutely no sound, and it never physically touched his skin. He described it purely as a silent clinical measurement or scan. No pain, no sensation, just observation.
Okay, this is already incredibly strange. But there's a detail that makes it even more bizarrely mundane almost.
Yeah, yes, the biscuit. While he's standing there, naked, being scanned by this incomprehensible technology by these alien beings, one of them apparently offered him something to eat.
Something to eat.
He described it as looking like a small, dry, white pastry or biscuit, maybe like an icicle shape, some reports say. One of the beings held it out to him.
And Jan
Wolski, in the midst of this profoundly bizarre, existentially terrifying situation, politely refused the biscuit.
He refused the alien biscuit. Why?
He never really explained why. Maybe just deep-seated peasant suspicion, a sense of propriety, who knows? But imagine that moment, the peak of high strangeness, punctuated by this awkward, almost social refusal. It's details like that which lend the story a weird ring of truth for some.
So after the scan And the biscuit refusal.
He was gestured to get dressed. He was led back out of the craft. He simply walked back to his waiting horse and cart. The craft, he said, lifted straight up, silently, and was gone above the trees in an instant.
And he just went home, told his family.
He did. He told his sons what happened, and the case's strength, coming back to our earlier theme, lies partly in the corroboration.
The physical evidence?
Yes. Jan was initially hesitant to go back, but his sons convinced him. They went to the clearing a couple days later, and they found them.
The impressions.
The 4 distinct square impressions in the soft earth. Each one about the size of a shoebox, pressed into the ground. Exactly where Jan said the corners of the boxy craft had rested or hovered close to the ground. Physical evidence of its presence, its weight transfer.
Undeniable marks.
Undeniable physical traces. And then there was the psychological evaluation.
He was evaluated. By whom?
By researchers who investigated the case shortly after, including a sociologist named Zingfe Blania-Bolnar. They found him to be completely lucid, calm, consistent in his account. There was no indication he was inventing the story or suffering from delusions.
He just recounted what happened.
He recounted it plainly, almost matter-of-factly. When they asked him why he thought this happened to him, why they chose him, his answer was apparently very simple. He just shrugged and said something like they wanted to see, to examine. No grand theories, just a simple statement of perceived intent.
So, you have high witness credibility, you have physical ground traces, you have a positive psychological assessment confirming lucidity. What was the official institutional response in Poland?
Pure suppression through inaction. Poland's Ministry of Internal Affairs was aware of the case. They collected the full sighting report, the witness testimony, the details about the ground traces, and they quietly filed it away, took absolutely no follow-up action, no further investigation, no public statement, nothing.
Just ignored it.
It seems it was a clear, quiet, deliberate decision to just ignore the unexplainable, even when it involved a credible citizen claiming direct interaction and examination by non-human entities backed by physical evidence.
So for governments across the spectrum, it seems the unexplainable is always easier to manage if it was simply archived and forgotten.
And that appears to be the consistent strategy, yes. File it, classify it, forget it, keep it contained.
Okay. Let's try to pull all these threads together now. We've covered a lot of ground, from Soviet train tracks to Polish forests to restricted U.S. airspace.
We have. And despite the diversity of locations, times, and political systems, a remarkably clear operational signature emerges from this collection of reports.
We saw that profound instrument failure, right? Both complex industrial systems like the train in Kremenez and simple tech like the lanterns in Klamath. A distinct EM effect.
Definitely. Then we analyzed the impossible physics of the physical traces. That localized thermal effect fusing gravel in Ukraine, vitrifying soil in California without the expected collateral heat damage.
And the kinetic effects, the pressed grass in France, the square landing gear marks in Poland, immense pressure applied cleanly, without blast effects.
Then we moved to the skies. The non-ballistic movement seen on Soviet radar, UFO, instantaneous acceleration, right-angle turns, things no known aircraft could do.
Contrasted with the terrifying defiance of detection systems, being visible but invisible to radar and IR at Pangongcho, or being electronically solid on radar but invisible to pilots at Usovo and Edwards.
A fundamental challenge to detection and interception capability.
And underpinning it all, that systematic, bureaucratic suppression. Using confusing technical jargon or outright seizure of evidence like the Calvine photo, or intimidation and reassignment of witnesses like in Kremenez and Usovo.
It's a remarkably consistent pattern of behavior across decades and across geopolitical divides.
So what's the real takeaway here for someone listening, trying to make sense of all this?
I think the real takeaway, the deeper lesson from digging into these archives of the unheard, isn't just about proving whether strange objects exist or not. The sheer weight of the combined evidence, the physical traces, the consistent phenomenology reported by credible people, the advanced technical data in some cases strongly suggests something genuinely anomalous was, and maybe still is, occurring.
But the bigger challenge is?
The bigger challenge is understanding how our global security institutions, military, intelligence agencies manage knowledge that completely defies their core operational parameters. Knowledge that fundamentally exposes them as potentially vulnerable or lacking control.
It's like the official explanation often becomes the least believable part of the whole story.
Exactly. When seasoned engineers are forced to sign reports blaming ionospheric interference for a molten glowing sphere stopping their train, or when the UK's Ministry of Defence cites unnecessary public alarm as a reason to bury arguably the best photographic evidence ever obtained, The secrecy itself starts to feel more corrosive, more unsettling than the original sighting might have been.
Because the objects themselves, in these accounts, they proved they could violate any airspace, they could escape any defense system, they could leave physical traces that contradict known physics.
And the response wasn't necessarily open investigation, but containment of the information?
And we have to remember the human cost of that containment, too.
Absolutely. The immediate demotion of experienced radar officers like Shallon, the quiet professional eradication of railroad engineers like Dimitro, having your life's most traumatic, bizarre experience officially rewritten and denied by a GRU officer or filed away under lock and key.
These actions weren't necessarily taken to protect the public from some external threat, were they?
It seems more likely they were taken primarily to protect the state's internal narrative. The narrative of technological superiority, of vigilance, of absolute control over its borders and airspace. The silence was maintained, arguably, to conceal the terrifying fact that, in the face of this phenomenon, they might have been technologically irrelevant, powerless.
It brings us back to that quiet, almost mythic warning that apparently circulated among veteran engineers on the Cremonese line after the 1983 incident, passed down to the younger crews.
What was that again?
Something like, if your dashboard dies near kilometer 241, don't leave the cab. Just wait it out. And if something appears on the track ahead, glowing silent, just watching, don't assume it's meant for you. Don't engage. Just endure.
A chilling piece of unofficial passed-down wisdom based on hard experience.
We hope you, listening, have found this deep dive into these archives of the unexplained compelling. The common threads we've tried to identify here, the consistent phenomenology across diverse cases, and the equally consistent global government reaction of suppression. They really force us to look beyond simple dismissal.
They push us to question the very mechanics of institutional knowledge control when faced with the truly anomalous.
Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe something for you to ponder.
If the most significant technological discovery of the entire Cold War era wasn't a new weapon system, not a missile or a bomber, but instead a recurring phenomenon that demonstrated the capacity to render all existing detection and interception systems utterly useless.
Would you ever realistically expect the governments involved, whether East or West, Soviet or NATO, to willingly, openly admit that vulnerability, to admit that level of helplessness?
What vital knowledge, what other encounters, what analyses might still be locked away in those dusty archives in cabinets marked simply, "No further escalation"?
We encourage you to review the patterns, the connections we discussed tonight. Check out the sources if you can find them. Until next time, keep digging. When you look up at the stars, or maybe you read about how power and wealth seem to concentrate in just a few hands, well, it sparks that basic human curiosity, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. You start asking questions.
Exactly, like who's really running the show? And maybe even more puzzling, how do we deal with these incredible events, things that are actually documented, when the official response is just silence?
Yeah, that gap, that tension. That's where things get interesting for our minds. When the people in charge, governments, militaries, whoever, when they don't give a good explanation for something huge.
Something people saw, something recorded.
Right. That vacuum doesn't stay empty for long, does it? It tends to get filled by the biggest, the most sweeping explanation available.
And that's precisely the territory we're diving into today. It's this chasm between, let's say, cosmic conspiracy on one side and hard documented institutional evidence on the other.
And the sources we're using for this deep dive are pretty far apart on the spectrum.
Definitely. On one side, we've got the work of David Icke. His theory is just vast. It's this incredibly detailed cosmic conspiracy involving, interdimensional, shape-shifting reptiles running the world. It's a whole cosmology.
A really elaborate one. And then on the complete opposite end, we have sources that are almost boringly factual if you just glance at them.
You mean the institutional stuff?
Exactly. Police reports, air traffic control tapes, military debriefings, even like soil analysis reports. These things come from all over the globe, dating back decades.
But they all document UAP sightings, unidentified aerial phenomena, objects seen by trained professionals, pilots, police, radar operators, doing things that just shouldn't be possible according to our physics.
Okay, so our mission today feels pretty clear. First, we really need to get our heads around the sheer scale of Icke's reptilian throne idea. What is this system he describes? How does he claim it works? And maybe why does it resonate with so many people? That resonance is key. And second, we absolutely have to anchor these, frankly, wild theories by looking closely at some specific, really credible UAP cases.
The ones documented by official bodies.
Right. The incidents where the evidence is strong, the witnesses are trained, but the official channels just clam up or dismiss it. Because that silence, that suppression, that's what creates the fertile ground for theories like X to really take hold.
And just a reminder, as always, our goal here is impartiality. We're exploring the material, the claims, the evidence.
Without endorsing any specific viewpoint, especially when things get politically charged, which they sometimes do in these theories.
Our job is to analyze, to look at what's being claimed, examine the institutional evidence that's out there, and understand how these documented real-world anomalies might feed into these grander explanations.
Let's get started.
Okay, so David Icke himself, the messenger. It's kind of fascinating how someone goes from being completely mainstream to being the guy warning about interdimensional lizards.
The transformation is pretty central to the whole story, isn't it? Before all the conspiracy stuff, he was actually quite respectable, mainstream British public figure.
Yeah, what was his background again?
Well, he was born in '52, played professional football for a while, goalkeeper for Coventry City, Hereford United.
Right, I remember that.
But arthritis cut that short. So he shifts into media. And he becomes this really well-known, trusted face. A sports presenter for the BBC. This is the late 70s through the 80s, covering big events. People knew him, liked him.
He was basically part of the furniture of British TV, the definition of, consensus reality.
Totally. But then comes this pivotal moment, what he describes as a spiritual awakening, and it all comes crashing into public view in 1991.
The Wogan interview. That's legendary, isn't it?
Infamous, maybe. He goes on this primetime talk show wearing a bright turquoise tracksuit.
The tracksuit.
Yeah, and he declares himself the son of the Godhead, starts warning about massive earth changes, global conspiracies.
Yeah, the reaction.
Immediate, widespread ridicule. The audience laughed openly. The press tore him apart. He basically became a national laughingstock overnight, lost his career, everything.
But here's the crucial part, the way he processed that experience. He didn't seem to internalize it as delusion.
Not at all. According to the sources, he framed it completely differently. He saw the mockery not as him being wrong, but as proof that people were resisting uncomfortable truths.
So the ridicule was the system defending itself.
Exactly. It became fuel for him. It solidified his resolve. This massive public shaming wasn't a setback. It was confirmation that he was onto something huge, something the powers that be didn't want revealed. It kind of forged his mission.
And that narrative is powerful for his followers too, right? It inoculates the theory against criticism.
Absolutely. If you criticize Icke, you're not engaging with facts, you're just part of the resistance, you're still asleep or controlled. It's a very effective defense mechanism he built, turning personal disaster into a core part of his cosmological battle.
So this newfound resolve leads him down this path to investigate hidden power structures, secret societies.
And ultimately to his central, most explosive claim, the idea of shapeshifters in positions of power.
Right. Let's unpack that. It's a big red flag.
Staggering, really. He claims that Earth isn't run by humans alone. He posits that there's this race of interdimensional beings, reptilian in nature. Sometimes he links them to the Draco constellation, who infiltrated human society thousands of years ago.
And they're not just influencing things from afar.
No. They wear human bodies like suits. They occupy the absolute peak positions of power globally. We're talking presidents, royal families, central bankers, media owners. The whole pyramid.
And how does he say they maintain this control over millennia? It's not just random infiltration.
No, it's systematic. He calls it the bloodline agenda.
Okay.
The idea is that these reptilians interbred with certain human families way back when, creating hybrid bloodlines that carry specific reptilian DNA.
And he names names, doesn't he?
Controversially. Oh, yeah. He points to major royal families, like the British House of Windsor, powerful banking families like the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, political dynasties like the Bushes, the Clintons. He argues these families aren't just powerful, they're genetically distinct, carrying this hybrid DNA.
And they preserve this.
How? Through meticulous intermarriage over centuries, keeping the bloodline pure to maintain that connection to the reptilian controllers and pass down the power.
Which brings us to the visual element, the mask slip. That's pretty chilling.
It really is. It's the idea that sometimes under stress or maybe during certain rituals or if there's some kind of energy fluctuation, These hybrids momentarily lose control of their human disguise.
And what's supposed to happen?
Their eyes might flash to vertical reptilian slits, or their skin might appear scaly or seem to shimmer for a second. It's presented as this fleeting glimpse behind the curtain, proof that the person you're seeing isn't fully human.
It blends that deep political paranoia with a kind of visceral body horror.
Exactly. It suggests reality itself is a carefully constructed illusion, and the rulers are literally wearing flesh suits.
Now, to give this historical grounding, Ick connects it all back to ancient myths and legends from around the world. He doesn't see them as just stories.
No, he argues they're cultural memories, fragmented accounts of this actual reptilian presence and rule in the distant past.
Like the Sumerian Anunnaki.
Precisely. Beings who came from the heavens to rule over humanity. He points to descriptions that sometimes sound serpentine or involve flying craft. He connects that directly to his modern reptilian theory.
And this isn't isolated to Sumeria.
Not according to him. He draws parallels everywhere. In India, you have the Nagas, serpent beings, often powerful, wise, sometimes dangerous, who could take human form and interbreed with humans.
They guarded treasures, held power.
Right. Then you go to Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god, a central figure of worship and power.
Even Egypt, you mentioned the tober on the pharaoh's crown.
The uraeus, yeah. A symbol of divine authority and sovereignty. Ick's point is, look, all these vastly different cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, all have these powerful serpent or reptilian figures linked to divinity, royalty, and creation.
So his conclusion is,
It's not coincidence, it's evidence of the same underlying phenomenon, the same group of non-human entities establishing themselves as gods or rulers way back then. They're just better hidden now, operating through these hybrid bloodlines instead of ruling openly.
okay, so if the bloodlines explain who is supposedly in charge, the next question is how? How do they maintain control over billions of people, largely unseen? This is where Ick's theory goes really cosmic, right? The Saturn Moon Matrix.
Yeah, this is where it moves beyond just politics and genetics into full-blown metaphysics. It's a huge concept. Ick argues that the real prison isn't physical, it's vibrational.
Vibrational prison. What does that actually mean? Can you break that down a bit?
Okay, think of reality or consciousness like a vast radio spectrum. Infinite frequencies, infinite possibilities, infinite knowledge. That's our natural state, according to Ick, boundless awareness.
Okay, like we have the potential to tune into anything.
Exactly. But the matrix acts like a powerful jamming signal. It forces our collective consciousness, our perception, down into a very narrow, very low frequency band.
So we're stuck on one station.
Pretty much. A station dominated by fear, stress, division, materialism, the five senses. We can't access the higher frequencies of unity, love, expanded awareness because the matrix actively blocks them. We think this limited reality is all there is. That's the prison.
That's a massive idea. And he pinpoints specific celestial bodies as part of this system, starting with Saturn.
Yeah, Saturn plays a central role. He doesn't see it as just a planet. He calls it the ancient center of worship, the black sun. He connects it to things like the ancient Roman festival Saturnalia and symbols like the black cube that appears in various traditions.
And its function in the matrix is?
It's the main transmitter. It's supposedly pulsing out these low-frequency vibrations, these limiting signals across the solar system. It's the source code of the prison, if you like.
But a signal needs to be received or amplified here on Earth. And that's where the moon comes in, our moon.
This is one of his most controversial claims. He argues the moon isn't a natural satellite at all.
Not natural. So what is it?
He claims it's an artificial construct, basically a huge hollowed-out spacecraft or station put into orbit ages ago by the reptilians.
Okay.
Why?
What's its job?
It's the relay station. It picks up the signals being broadcast from Saturn and beams them directly at Earth, much more intensely. Its constant presence ensures we're bathed in these matrix frequencies 247, keeping us locked in that narrow band of perception.
So the moon we see every night is essentially part of the prison wall.
In his cosmology, yes, a crucial part of the control infrastructure, maintaining the vibrational lockdown.
Which means the control isn't just through, say, manipulating media or finance.
No, it's far deeper. It's about manipulating our very perception of reality. The systems we see, politics, finance, media, they're just surface-level tools operating within the matrix.
Like the idea that elections don't really change anything fundamental.
Exactly. He famously says, left and right are just two wings of the same bird of prey. They offer an illusion of choice, but both ultimately serve the same underlying control system, keeping people divided and distracted within the established frequency range.
And this ties into that classic conspiracy concept, problem reaction solution.
Definitely. He argues this is a primary tactic used by the controllers to manipulate humanity and erode freedoms.
How does that work again?
Simple but effective. First, you secretly create a problem. Could be a war, a terrorist attack, a financial crash, even a pandemic. That's the problem.
Okay.
Then you manage the public's response. You amplify the fear, the panic, the outrage through the media you control. People react with demands for safety, for something to be done. That's the reaction.
Fear and desperation.
Right. And then you, the same force that created the problem, step forward and offer the solution, which coincidentally always involves giving up more rights, more freedoms, accepting more surveillance, centralizing more power, all in the name of safety.
So people willingly walk further into the cage because they're scared.
That's the idea, manufactured consent through fear. It makes the bloodline's control seem legitimate because people asked for the changes.
This leads us to the really disturbing question. Why? What's the ultimate purpose of maintaining this whole elaborate system of control and fear? Which brings us to energy harvesting, the concept of looch.
Yeah, this is probably the darkest part of the theory. If the bloodlines are the hardware of control, Lich is the software, or maybe the fuel.
What is looch exactly?
It describes it as a kind of subtle life force energy that these interdimensional reptilians need to consume to sustain themselves, especially in our dimension. And crucially, the type of energy they supposedly feed on is generated by negative human emotions.
Primarily fear.
Fear is the big one, but also trauma, stress, suffering, guilt, depression, any low-frequency emotional energy.
So global events that cause mass suffering aren't just tragic side effects, they're intentional.
That's the chilling implication. Wars, economic collapses, orchestrated crises. They're not just about power or resources in the conventional sense. They're engineered to generate vast quantities of this negative emotional energy lush, which floods the vibrational field and feeds the controllers.
It reframes human history as a kind of psychic farm.
A dark farm, yeah. Where humanity is the livestock, constantly prodded and stressed to produce the maximum yield of negative energy.
What about the rituals he talks about? Secret societies, occult practices.
He sees those as concentrated harvesting operations. Ancient and modern rituals, especially those involving sacrifice, human or animal, literal or symbolic, are viewed as ways to generate and release intense bursts of lech. It's why, he argues, conflict and division are perpetually stoked peace, and harmony would essentially starve the system.
Wow. It's an incredibly bleak picture. Is there any way out, according to Ick? Any hope?
There is, and it's entirely internal, which is interesting. His final message is one of empowerment in a way. He stresses that the entire matrix system relies on our consent and, crucially, our fear.
So the key is to stop being afraid.
And to stop consenting, consciously or unconsciously. True liberation, he says, comes from shifting your own consciousness, making a deliberate choice to operate from love, unity, compassion, and expand awareness, rather than the fear the Matrix broadcasts.
Like changing your own vibrational frequency.
Exactly. If enough people wake up and refuse to resonate with fear, refuse to participate in the division, they effectively cut off the lech supply, they starve the system. The whole Saturn-Moon matrix, this vast control structure, collapses when humanity reclaims its innate, infinite, non-fearful consciousness. It's a call for a spiritual and psychological revolution.
Okay, that's the grand sweeping theory. Cosmic control, reptilian bloodlines, vibrational prisons. It's mind-bending stuff. But now we need to pivot hard. Does the real world, as documented by our own institutions, show us anything that might, well, make someone need such an extreme explanation?
That's the critical link. And the source material we have on UAP incidents suggests yes. Unequivocally, yes.
We're talking about the official logs, the reports from pilots, police.
Right. And what these documents show, time and again, across decades and continents, are objects performing maneuvers that defy known physics. They often cause electromagnetic interference, and almost invariably, they are met with official denial, downplaying, or downplaying, silence, classified files.
And it's that pattern, the undeniable anomaly, followed by the institutional cover-up or dismissal, that creates the gap.
Precisely. It breeds distrust. If the authorities won't or can't explain these credible events, people will look elsewhere for answers. And that's where theories like Aick's find fertile ground.
So let's look at some specific cases, not just as dry reports, but maybe try to see them through the eyes of the people who were there, the professionals who saw something impossible. Let's start in the U.S. Chicago O'Hare, November 2006. Gate C-17. This isn't some remote desert. This is one of the world's busiest airports.
Yeah, imagine you're working there. Ground crew, maybe a pilot waiting for pushback. It's daytime, overcast sky. Suddenly, you and about a dozen other United Airlines employees, trained observers, remember, look up, and you see it.
What do they see?
A perfect circular, metallic-looking disc just hovering there, silently, about 1,900 feet up, right over the gate area. No engine noise, nothing, just hanging in the air.
Okay, that's weird enough. But the departure is what really breaks the rules, right?
Completely. It didn't bank or fly away. It shot straight up, vertically. The witnesses described it punching a clean, perfectly round hole through the thick cloud layer.
A visible hole.
Yeah, a hole that apparently stayed there for several minutes after the object was gone, like something solid just forced its way through.
Incredible. So, what did the authorities say? The FAA? This is their airspace.
Their immediate public response, nothing to see here. They claimed no radar confirmation, which is debatable given how radar works, and suggested it was probably just a weather phenomenon called a hole punch cloud.
Even though meteorologists often disagree with that explanation for such sightings.
Right, and crucially, internal emails that later surfaced showed that people within United and the FAA were taking it very seriously, discussing it internally. So you have this public dismissal versus private concern.
That disconnect is exactly the issue. Trained witnesses see something impossible, the object leaves a physical trace in the clouds, internal comms show concern, but the public story is weather.
That's the pattern. It fuels suspicion like nothing else.
And this isn't just a U.S. thing. Let's go back further, behind the Iron Curtain. Brno, Czechoslovakia, July 1987.
Mid-Cold War. Tense times. Air traffic controllers at Brno Airport, plus the pilots of a Czechoslovakian airliner, all see this thing. Visually and on radar.
What was it?
A brilliant white orb, silent, moving against the established flight paths. A clear anomaly in controlled airspace.
And the reaction. This Warsaw Pact territory. They must have taken it seriously.
Instantly, they scrambled 2 MiG-23 fighter jets, top-of-the-line interceptors for the era.
So, military jets versus the orb, what happened?
The MiG pilots got intermittent visual lock. They tried to engage. But the orb, well, the official report is stunning. It describes the object accelerating and climbing vertically at speeds the pilots said their instruments couldn't even properly calculate.
Speeds beyond their jets. Beyond human endurance.
Way beyond. We're talking maneuvers that would exert impossible G-forces. Then, it just vanished. Simultaneously from the pilot's view and from all radar screens, civilian and military.
And the official conclusion.
The internal report acknowledged its non-aerodynamic behavior, but publicly. Total silence. Under that regime, such things were simply not discussed. The event was logged, classified, and buried. Again, credible witnesses, multiple sensor confirmations, physics-defying performance, followed by official suppression.
Okay, let's move from the sky to the ground. Encounters involving police officers, people whose job is to pursue and intercept.
Right. And sometimes they encountered things they simply couldn't catch, things that seemed almost playful or intelligent, like the Shikoku orb pursuit in Japan, May 1975.
Tell me about that one.
Patrol officers on a highway, Route 11, they spot this bright, glowing orb. Silent. They start chasing it. This goes on for half an hour.
And the object.
It seemed aware of them. It would speed up when they got close, slow down, hover directly over their car sometimes. It anticipated their moves. It felt like it was interacting with them.
That's eerie. Were there any other effects?
Yes. Whenever the orb was really close, their police radio would just fill with static, cut out completely, clear electromagnetic interference.
And was this just the officer's word?
No. The Japan Air Self-Defense Force radar station nearby also confirmed tracking an anomalous target in that area at the same time, noting its erratic movements, sudden lateral shifts, impossible acceleration. So you've got the police visual, the chase, the EM effects, and military radar confirmation.
Yet, presumably, no official explanation.
None that satisfies the data.
And we see a similar pattern even under communist rule. The Krakow police pursuit in Poland, mid-70s.
Yeah, this one's fascinating because of the context. Poland in the 70s, UFO reports were definitely not encouraged. Officially, they didn't happen. But we have the records. A police patrol car chased a bright, silent spherical light through the city of Krakow and out into the countryside. Again, for about 30 minutes. Again, the report mentioned the object seemed aware of the pursuit.
And the official logs.
The police logbook explicitly notes unidentified aerial object pursuit. And crucially, it also mentions radio interference reported.
Just like in Shikoku.
Exactly. And furthermore, military radar based outside Krakow also logged an unidentified target moving erratically in the same area, same time frame.
So even in the state actively suppressing these reports, you have both the police and the military independently documenting the same unexplainable event involving impossible movement and EM effects.
And then silence. The fact that these official records exist, despite the political climate, speaks volumes about the reality of the encounters and the subsequent effort to keep it quiet.
Okay, witness testimony is powerful, radar hits add credibility, EM interference is compelling. But what about physical evidence? Times when these things actually leave something behind. Close encounters of the second kind, CE2s.
Right. When there's something tangible to investigate, it forces the institutions to engage on a scientific level. A classic case is Tacuarembó, Uruguay, back in the mid-1960s.
What happened there?
Some farmers reported seeing a disc-shaped craft. Silent, pale dome on top, watched it descend and apparently land briefly in a pasture.
And the next day.
They found the evidence. A perfect circle in the grass about 7 meters across. The ground inside was scorched, hard as rock. Plants around the edge looked burnt.
Just a grass fire.
That's what they had to rule out. And they did. The Uruguayan Air Force actually had an official UFO investigation unit, Ciudadovni, they investigated, along with local police.
They have that findings.
Soil analysis confirmed sudden intense heating and significant moisture loss, different from a normal fire. Plus, they got anomalous compass readings around the circle's edge, electromagnetic residue.
So the official investigation confirmed physical traces consistent with the farmer's report of an unknown craft landing.
Yes. They confirmed the physical evidence was real, caused by some kind of extreme localized heat and energy. The source of that energy, officially declared unknown, classified.
Let's jump forward decades, but see a similar pattern of physical effects, maybe more subtle. Tuscumbia, Alabama, July 2006.
This one had multiple witnesses, including a solid one. Doug Carter, a retired U.S. Air Force veteran, he actually filmed 3 glowing red-orange lights.
What were they doing?
Hovering silently in a perfect triangular formation, very stable.
And physical effects.
Yes. A local sheriff's deputy driving nearby around the same time reported his police radio went haywire, filled with static and interference when he was near the light's location. Echoes of Krakow and Shikoku.
What did analysis of the video show?
Experts who looked at Carter's footage noted the lights maintained that precise geometric formation, suggesting either a single large structured object or multiple objects flying in incredibly tight coordinated formation. Something huge, silent, capable of just hanging there.
And the official response? Military activity.
Military denied any aircraft in the area. No commercial traffic matched. So again, credible witnesses, video evidence reported EM effects, met with an official shrug, filed away as unexplained.
So let's try to pull these threads together now. We've explored Aki's huge, intricate theory of reptilian control and the Saturn-Moon matrix.
A theory built on bloodlines, vibrational prisons, and energy harvesting.
And then we've looked at these specific, documented real-world cases, O'Hare, Brno, Shikoku, Krakow, Tacuarembó, Tuscumbia, cases where official institutions encountered phenomena they couldn't explain.
And the common denominator, the unifying thread linking the wild theory to the hard evidence, is what?
It has to be the official reaction, the silence, the denial, the suppression.
Exactly. In almost every credible UAP case involving institutional witnesses, pilots, police, military, radar operators, the official response is either dismissal, it was weather, swamp gas, misidentification, or outright classification and silence. Even when their own internal documents, like the Brno report or the Krakow logs, confirm the anomalous nature of the event.
And that institutional behavior, that refusal to acknowledge reality as documented by their own people and censors, is what creates the vacuum.
It's the perfect breeding ground for theories like X. If the authorities are demonstrably lying or hiding the truth about these specific verifiable events, well, it lends credibility to the much larger idea that they might be hiding something far bigger.
It makes the concept of an illusion of freedom, a managed reality, seem less far-fetched. Because here's concrete proof that they do manage information, they do suppress inconvenient truths.
Right. The genius, or maybe the danger of X theory, is that it provides a comprehensive narrative, a framework for that deep-seated suspicion. It puts a name and a face, albeit a reptilian one, on that feeling that things aren't what they seem, that we're not being told the truth.
It gives shape to the unnameable sense that maybe humanity isn't entirely in control of its own destiny.
Whether you take the reptilian throne literally, or see it as a metaphor for entrenched, perhaps non-human or anti-human power structures. The theory endures because it resonates with that observed reality of institutional secrecy and the constant generation of fear and conflict, the lutch.
So the legacy of looking at these two things side by side, the grand conspiracy and the documented anomalies, is that it forces you, the listener, to question the nature of authority and the reality you're presented with.
When the most highly trained observers, the pilots navigating complex airspace, the police officers on patrol, the radar techs monitoring the screens, are the first ones to have their credible reports dismissed or buried by the very institutions they work for. What does that tell us?
It suggests that maintaining the official narrative, the illusion of complete understanding and control, might be more important to those institutions than acknowledging phenomena that challenge it.
And that brings us back to Icke's idea of awakening. Regardless of the specifics of his theory, the core message, question everything, don't consent to fear, reclaim your perception, gains power when juxtaposed with the documented reality of UAP suppression. The denial itself becomes evidence for the cage he describes. #outro.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. From ancient Sumerian gods and the House of Windsor's alleged DNA, all the way to the physics-defying maneuvers of objects tracked by Cold War MiGs and the forensic analysis of scorched earth in Uruguay.
It's quite the spectrum. The sheer audacity of the cosmic conspiracy theory on one side and the stark, persistent reality of these high-credibility, officially documented UAP anomalies on the other.
And we've seen how the narrative power of something like Icke's bloodline agenda seems almost fueled, or at least given oxygen, by the consistent pattern of institutional silence and denial surrounding these unexplained events worldwide.
That silence is just as much a part of the data as the sightings themselves. It's a phenomenon in its own right.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. If the institutions we rely on, aviation authorities, military commands, police forces, are demonstrably aware of phenomena that violate our known physics, phenomena documented in their own internal records.
And yet their public stance is often one of denial, ridicule, or simply telling you it didn't happen or wasn't important.
Then how much trust can you place in their broader claims about managing reality, about what's possible and what isn't?
Maybe consider this. Could it be that the greatest trick of any hidden controlling force, whether you imagine it as Icke's reptilians or just deeply entrenched human power structures, isn't manipulating elections or economies? Maybe the greatest trick is maintaining the illusion that everything unexplained, everything that fundamentally challenges our comfortable reality is just imagination.
The official reports tell one story internally. The public often gets a very different one. And maybe exploring that contradiction is where the real deep dive begins.